I want to bring up somebody else that's had a lot of influence in my life beyond my parents, and that would be my wife, Lori. I want you to come up. So, which microphone here? Is this the yellow mic? Yep. All right, so sound booth. Pay very close attention. If you see me do this.
Yeah, oh no.
That means mute her microphone. Mute it. Okay, so this may be a first and a last all at one time. We'll see how it goes. So, I've been doing this series on identity, and this will be the last one in this, unless God gives me something else before the next time I speak. And so I want to quickly review, and here's the thought. After every time I've spoken, I've asked my wife, so how did the message come across? What did you get? What do you think? And I get feedback. And a lot of it is,
I love to critique him.
I didn't understand half of what you said. So as Soraya used to come up and translate for Josue, I've brought Lori up to translate for me. So
I've said this before, I'm very simple-minded, so sometimes I have to, ask him things twice. He's very deep. If you haven't noticed already with his messages that he's given, he's loves to study and go very deep, and sometimes I'm kind of like, what did you just say? So, for if anybody else out there has the simple mind like me, I'll try to interpret today.
Well, I've either had too much coffee or not enough. I'm a little jittery, so bear with. All right, so I want to do a quick review on what I've talked about the last several times that I've spoken. The first thing is, on identity, you're unique, and you're here for a reason. If God didn't need you, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't. You have a unique purpose and a design. You have an assignment, your purpose, and your job is to find that purpose and to fulfill that, so that when you stand before God, you hear, welcome in, good and faithful servant. You have fulfilled your purpose. There's two emotions that all other emotions stem from, and those are love and fear. We're hardwired at birth for love, and we have to learn fear. I don't want to say we have to learn it, but we learn fear. We learn that's hot, that's this, that's that. We learn to be afraid of the cars in the road. We learn fear. And Lori?
I learned it too well, evidently.
You're no longer a slave to fear.
Yeah, that was perfect song for this morning because, I've got my Brave key on too, Rebecca, that you gave me. Thank you. I'm using that this morning.
Yeah, my key said enough. Hers said brave. So it was perfect.
Yeah.
I think Rebecca picked out the
Perfect
word for
song.
each of us. So
yeah,
that was great.
But fear has been a problem, I would say, in my life. And go on, because I know there's another spot.
She's pretty much taught the kids that you can die from everything you do. There's the whole chain that will take place. If you step off of this platform and run across there might be a nail on the floor that might be rusty that will give you tetanus, which will lead to lockjaw, and then you won't be able to eat, and you'll waste away to nothing, and you'll die.
You remember Friday night at the cookout, music ministry had a cookout, and it's all dark, and kids are running around playing tag, and I'm yelling at them, stop running! You're going to trip over something! And they laugh at me because I'm like, something like what? And I'm like, some piece of metal sticking up or something. I'm a little,
So you got to watch out for random pieces of metal sticking up in a field. They'll get you every time. So to finish our quick review, we talked about negative talk and negative self-talk and how it can affect your identity, how you can continue to run yourself down. And then we also talked about positive talk and self-talk, and how you can build up and edify other people with those things. So today, with identity, we're talking about destiny and purpose. And like I said, you have a purpose. I read an article that I ran across that talked about 7 roadblocks to finding your purpose. And, Rick Warren put out that book years back called The Purpose-Driven Life, and it just sold like mad because people have a hunger and a desire to find their purpose. Why am I here? But studies show that only 3% of people ever really find their purpose. 3%. And here's some of the roadblocks that we run into with that. The first one is satisfaction. People think life's pretty good. They've never bothered to ask the question, what's my purpose? Or they don't see a need to go there. Another one is complacency. People don't want to make the effort or devote the time or the energy to finding out what their purpose is. Another one is unbelief. People don't believe that God has a special purpose for them or that they are special enough for God to even use. Another roadblock is fear. What if I don't like my purpose? What if the changes are too big or the risk or the cost is too high? What if my purpose isn't big enough? What if it isn't a big enough deal? What if my purpose is just to clean this church? And we say just like it's a small thing. But it's a big responsibility. Another one is procrastination. We think, well, maybe later. I don't have enough time right now or the resources. I've just got to get this job. I got to do this job. This is what I'm supposed to do. I got to get this done because I need money to live. So you don't put any extra energy or time into finding out what your purpose is, or you don't even know where to start. Unwillingness is a roadblock. You don't really want to know because then you'll be held responsible. You know, what if my job is to swim with sharks? I don't want to be held responsible for that.
That is probably the only fear that John has, I would say, is sharks.
Speaking of fear,
I have all the fear, he has no fear.
I can magically get sharks to appear in a swimming pool or a pond, or it doesn't matter. My imagination will take off. It's terrible. I used to have this fear that while I was in the bathtub, the bottom would open up and I would be magically dropped into an ocean with a bunch of swimming sharks. How's that for imagination?
Sorry, didn't mean to distract you.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're doing good.
You're allowed. You're allowed. The seventh one that they listed, the last one they listed was unworthiness. People think my past has doomed my future. I don't believe God can use me because of the things I've done or things that have happened to me. Those were their 7, and they listed the 2 biggest being fear and unworthiness. I added an 8th. Mine is acceptance. I think we get caught up so much in worrying about are people accepting me and trying to fit in that we don't really find our purpose. What part of our identity are we trying to keep up based on how we think people think we should be? For me, I use comedy as a mask. If I get myself in a shy, awkward, or uncomfortable situation, I make a joke to distract. And then people make the comment like, haha, you're so funny, you should be a comedian. And then I soak up that attention and go, haha. So the next time I'm trying to figure out, okay, where can I slip in a joke because I have to maintain this persona. And then after a while, after you've made so many jokes and you try to be, then you become the annoying guy that's always joking. And then nobody takes you serious. I think the first time I got up here to preach, everybody must have been thinking, that guy? I mean, it was like Jim Carrey taking a role in The Mystic, right? He tried to do an actual stage drama role and nobody wanted to take him serious. You can become that guy and you can get yourself so caught up in doing those things that you don't focus on, God, what is my purpose? Why am I here? In this church, we had that word destiny up here. We are about trying to help people find their purpose. We don't want just people to come here get saved, stay here, and then we all get to perform their funeral when they die because they've been here this many years. We want people to come in, find their purpose, find their destiny, get trained up, and let us send them out. It doesn't mean disappear without talking to anybody. It means let us send you out, seed you out into the community, into the nations, into the county, into the state. We're about helping people find their purpose. So their article listed fear and unworthiness as being the two biggest roadblocks to you finding your purpose. And with only 3% finding their purpose, it's no wonder why we deal with so much depression in the U.S. and in the world. I'm going to read you a few statistics on that. You're allowed
I just think it's so funny because
you're allowed to cut me off at any time.
the whole thing about fear and unworthiness, it's funny because we are so much, I mean, that's us. I mean, that's been our struggle in our whole marriage since, 25? I've lost track of how many years we've been married. 26 is it this summer?
Well.
Or winter, spring? You laugh, but there's a reason for that, but we'll go into that maybe another time. You know, that he's always had this.
Sometimes you don't know what you had till it's gone.
Well, I'm not going into it, remember?
Yeah, we're not going into it. Yeah.
He's just always had this low self-esteem, unworthy feeling. Like whenever anybody would say anything to him, his mind always perceives it as the absolute worst they could have. You know, my mind would always interpret it, they didn't mean that, or that you took it wrong. And he just always had, a difficult time. He didn't think very well of himself. And me, I was always
So for Lori, physically
side.
everything will kill you. For me, emotionally, everything will kill me.
Yeah. So it's been a struggle. So for us to be standing up here and you talking about the two things that I would say were kind of a struggle in our life.
Yeah, this is something that I'm passionate about studying into and learning because I need it. I really need it. And a little bit of this information we'll get into because you're getting ahead of the message. I went over I used in the FFCC class, which starts next Sunday, shameless plug. And that was one of the classes I took some of that information from. So Kent, you'll recognize some of this. And anyway, let me get back into this. The statistics I wanted to read you is 16.2 million people, this was from 2016, had at least, that's 6.7% of the U.S. population, had at least one major depressive episode in the last year. That was in 2016. 1.5% deal with low-level persistent depressive disorder, which is called PDD. And that can last up to 2 years before they get out of that. 2.8% deal with another type of depression called bipolar or manic depressive disorder. And 83% of these are considered severe. 5% deal with seasonal depression.
And Pastor Josue,
and that usually occurs in the autumn.
The cold weather.
Yeah,
winter.
And these numbers are only from the people that sought help. How many more are sitting out there dealing with the depression and don't know where to go, don't know who to reach out to, don't know how to even approach what they should do? I want to bring up a couple of scriptures we're going to go through here. Romans 12:2. Sorry, I'm doing the hand thing again. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Renew your mind. When we become born again, we have Christ put in us. But our mind doesn't just automatically, instantly become something different. We have to renew our mind. That is our job. We have to daily renew our mind. Let's throw up Philippians 4:8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. We dwell on the negative, that doesn't help us renew our mind. We have to look at the positive things and begin to put those in and create those pathways. We talked about that the last time with the 3 21-day cycles that it takes to form that new pathway or pattern in your mind. It's not an instant fix for most people. God can do a miracle and heal somebody instantly of a drug addiction, but that doesn't happen for everybody. God is not a Xerox machine, as Joel told me. Let's look at 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, Lori, but of power and of love and a sound mind.
Should have let me read it because that is my verse.
We have a sound mind. And the last one I want to pull up here is 2 Corinthians 10:5. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. And that's how we begin to renew our mind. When we start having those old thoughts, when that old way of thinking comes back on us, that way that we don't want to be comes on us, we have to take that thought captive and change it. We have to spin it. There's a therapy that people have been using lately called cognitive behavioral therapy, which is much different than the old Freudian lay down on the couch and figure out where something went wrong in your childhood and, blame mom and dad or something along that lines.
Can you say that again?
It's cognitive behavioral therapy. In other words, the way your mind processes information and then how you behave based on the inputs. And so it focuses on modifying dysfunctional emotions, behavior, and thoughts.
Did you get that? You want to say it again?
Right.
Sorry, again, like I said, his mind sometimes, he in his other job that he had before here, he was an engineer, an electronic engineer. And so his brain is like,
Kenton is the brain.
yeah, true, Kenton too.
So cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on modifying, in other words, changing, dysfunctional, unhealthy, thank you. Great. I got other translators. Thank you, Hannah. Emotions, behavior, and thoughts. And this helps us modify the filters that we view the world through. We build these filters that we process everything through. We build those up in our mind. Those are those pathways that we talked about that we create. It's a natural way of thinking. It becomes autonomic, meaning it happens automatically without us even thinking about it. It's an unconscious thought. We see a red light, we stop. We don't have to process, oh wait, red means stop, okay, right foot, touch. We don't think that way, it just happens. It's an automatic process. You'll get it, Reese. So sometimes these filters that we're using, they get dirty. We start to throw negative thoughts into them and our filters change. And just like on a car, when we change the oil, we change the filter and we get rid of those impurities. We need to change that filter in our mind, and the only way to change it is through positive self-talk, positive talk, and to keep rewriting over those negative pathways. Rewrite over and over.
If I can say something really quickly, I feel like we were both blessed to have good parents. My mom's here. Joan's parents are here this morning. And I feel like we were very blessed. I was very blessed. They influenced me. One of the things that I think they taught me the most was, or that I feel like was the most valuable, is to always be in church every Sunday. I don't know if I ever remember my parents ever missing a Sunday morning church. And that's important to us, and, they influenced me, and I just kind of felt like if you feel like your parents didn't have a very good influence on you, and if there's someone here that felt that, that they didn't have a good family life and all that, we want to be that influence to you here. And I just encourage you, if it's not this church, find a church family and be involved in Joelle and Soraya. I want to pick on them for a minute here too. They are awesome influences on us. And so many times with the kids and things, they are such a blessing and such a help and influence us a lot with things. And you need to find a Joelle and Soraya like that. If you don't already have one, just you can't take ours, they're for us. No, I'm just joking. Everybody can, but I just encourage you to, if you feel like you didn't have a good influence when you were a kid, get around, in the business world, they teach you if you want to be successful, hang around with the people that are successful. And so I just encourage you to find a successful couple, or someone and hang around them. Sorry.
That was good. Well, Jared, if I can get you to throw that PowerPoint up there. Hey, who am I? All right, so previously before, if you want to go to the next one here. Okay, so this is within a book by Dr. Burns, David Burns, who's a psychologist, talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. And I had Heather put this diagram together for me because the other one was a little crude. The way it was put together, it was just hard to read off the print of a page, and so she did a great job here. So what we've got here, we look at that yellow arrow, that symbolizes the world, and it's a series of positive and neutral and negative events that we take into our mind. It's not anything until we process it. So we go to that light blue box, that's our thoughts. You interpret those events with a series of thoughts that continually flow through your mind, and that's called your internal dialogue. It's those thoughts that then produce a mood about what we are seeing in the world. Your feelings are created by your thoughts and not the actual events. All experiences must be processed through your brain and given a conscious meaning before you experience any emotional response. So that's all those filters that we're creating, all those positive pathways I've been talking about, and renewing our mind. We can go to the next slide. I used this one before, and I thought it would be great here today. Chaos or order. We've got the cornfield, and he got ahead of me. But we've got the one picture on the left, if you back up one. As I drove by this cornfield, I looked out at it, and it looks like there's no rhyme or reason to how those seeds were planted in that field. It looks like absolute chaos, just random. But as I turn the corner and look back, you see the perfect rows. And I don't know if that's easy enough to see on these pictures at this size. So there was a purpose and a plan. It's the same field. From one direction, it looks like chaos. From the other direction, it looks like perfect order. But what's the difference? Our perspective. Standing in a different place or looking at it from a different position brings it into perfect alignment. And you see the original creator's design or the planter's design, the farmer's design in the field. Let's go ahead and move on. I want to take a look at these are cognitive distortions. I want to give you some definitions of these cognitive distortions. And what this means, this is actually talking about the way that we process things through our mind and how we can take them and distort them in the process of thinking and some of the ways that we do that. Because I want you to look for these things in your own life and start to notice them and verbally speak out against that way of thinking so that you begin to start to get those positive pathways formed. So let's go with the first one. These are kind of small. All or nothing thinking. You see things in black and white categories. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. I hit a wrong note on the guitar during the first song this morning, and it still haunts me.
I heard it. No, joking.
I had to learn the song in a different key from what we played it in before, and I just did mistakes, argument, So let's go to number 2. Overgeneralization. You see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. Well, this always happens to me. Every time I go to the grocery store, I get caught behind somebody who is so slow, or I get the worst cashier. I had said before I need a t-shirt that I can wear that says, if you're in line ahead of me or behind me, it's going to be a while. That'll hit you later. Let's go to the next one. There's one they call mental filter. You pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your vision of all reality becomes darkened, like the drop of ink that colors the entire beaker of water. Let's go to the next one. Disqualifying the positive. It's like when somebody gives you a compliment and you, oh, no, I can't accept that. You reject positive experiences by insisting they don't count for some reason or other. In this way, you can maintain a negative belief that is contradicted by your everyday experiences. Let's look at the next. Jumping to conclusions. You want to take this one, Lori?
I can't read it.
Okay. You make a negative interpretation even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. One of those is mind reading. You arbitrarily conclude that someone is reacting negatively to you, and you don't bother to check this out. Another one is they call the fortune teller error. You anticipate that things will turn out badly, and you feel convinced that your prediction is an already established fact.
Yeah, that would be what I struggle with. I already told you the story. I jumped ahead, but yes, fear is, God is teaching me a lot of things, and we were just talking yesterday, and I can't remember exactly how you said it, but you said the thing, sometimes we pray, am I jumping ahead? Sometimes we pray and we ask God to
a little bit.
Take away that thing, like that fear, take away that fear, but really well, you probably need to explain it because my, brain.
It's all part of the training and the lesson. It's all part of building up that endurance that we need for whatever it is that he's called us to.
We have to take our thoughts captive. We have to, stop and not ask God, like my analogy when we had to take that boat ride to Kelly's Island. We had to go for Xander's 5th and 6th grade camp, and we had to take a ferry. And it's not a small little boat. This boat it can hold 20 cars and trucks, and it's a big ferry that goes across. And this day, it almost got canceled because there was a high wind advisory, and they thought that, we might not even get to go to camp. So they warned us way back. They didn't tell the kids, but they warned us.
There was an iceberg. There weren't enough life rafts.
But, in my head, I was like, oh, man, when we got there, they didn't cancel it, and we had to get on this boat with all these kids. And so my head is thinking all these things of, we're going down. And we have all these kids on this boat,
The boat did this the whole way. I was standing at the window, and I was like, water, sky, water, sky.
And the trucks and the water's coming up over the side, and, so God is teaching me in the storms too, literal storms, because I don't like the storms, to stop and take those thoughts captive and not, imagine the worst.
Let's go to the next one. Magnification. This is Lori's. Catastrophizing or minimization. You exaggerate the importance of things, such as you goof up or someone else's achievement, or you inappropriately shrink things until they appear tiny, your own desirable qualities or the other fellow's imperfections. This is also called the binocular trick.
Is this the one where I get to talk about you cutting my trees down?
The catastrophizing, yes.
Yeah.
I trimmed 3 branches off of a weeping cherry tree, and it ruined the whole thing.
Well, fortunately, it was on the side of the house, so you can't see it from the road. And then the next week, I went out and saw him fixing my edging on my flower beds.
Well, so they're called weeping cherry trees, okay?
Oh,
and when I mow through there, I have to duck underneath because otherwise you get poked in the eye and then you weep. So that's how they became, sorry, dad joke. It's a dad joke, not his dad. I'm just saying that's a dad joke in general. So she likes to catastrophize things. Emotional reasoning, that's the next one. You assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are. I feel it, therefore it must be true. I think we all do that one a lot. It's hard to get out of the hole when you're stuck down there with that one. Should statements. Number 8. You try to motivate yourself with should and shouldn'ts. I do this a lot. As if you had to be whipped and punished before you could be expected to do anything. Musts and oughts are also offenders. The emotional consequence, guilt. When you direct should statements toward others, you feel anger, frustration, and resentment. I use those a lot. I mess something up, say, well, I should have done this. I should have done that. No, I could have, but I didn't. We got, the next one is labeling and mislabeling. This is an extreme form of overgeneralization. Instead of describing your error, you attach a negative label to yourself. I'm a loser. When someone else's behavior rubs you the wrong way, you attach a negative label to him. He's a friggin' idiot.
No, usually John says,
I'm
an idiot. And I yell,
You're an idiot.
If you remember the Grinch, I love that one.
Mislabeling involves describing an event with language that is highly colored and emotionally loaded. I printed out, let me go through the last one and then I'll tell you about this. The last one is personalization. You see yourself as the cause of some negative external event, which in fact you were not primarily responsible for. We assign ourselves blame on a lot of things. And I don't know if it's just a noble way to try to be humble and take it on yourself when you didn't have anything to do with it, but we do that a lot. Now, I've got printouts on these, and I realized that I cannot let you have any of these. If you guys wanted these, I was going to let you take them, but I need to edit one thing out of this before I can let anyone have it. Because you'll notice in the brackets, I changed the words that were there, and this paper has it the way it originally was in this guy's book, and it's not Christian. So, not by a long shot. So anyway, if anybody wants one of these, I can get it to you. Let me know. I'll have them in the church office. You can grab it next week. But Shannon, do not allow those to go out, please. Keep them flipped over. So those are those cognitive distortions, those things we take and we do this to our mind all the time. And we just take and go to a negative place with things using these different methods. And we build those negative pathways. And we get so caught up in that we cannot focus on what's our purpose, what's God called us to, what are we doing? If we look at the Israelites, they were born in captivity in Egypt. Moses went in and liberated them, but they were not free in their minds. They were liberated. Liberated doesn't mean free. They were liberated, but they always had that slavery mentality. Whenever anything was going wrong, they were like, we need to go back to Egypt. At least we knew how things were there. They couldn't live in that. And if you notice, only Joshua and Caleb were the only ones that were actually allowed to enter into the promised land. Only the majority were born free. Only the ones that were born free, that had the freedom mindset, were able to actually enter into the promised land. All that had that slavery mentality died off in the desert and never got to enter into that promised land. So we have to be liberated from our bad habits, our mindsets, and our ways of thinking. And this will allow our children to be free of those ways of thinking. we will constantly have to fight those filters. It's like a person in AA. Those filters will always be there trying to call us back to take another drink and pull us back in a hole. So we need to daily renew our mind and keep those proper way of thinking. It's, for example, let me give you this. Pastor Josue, primary language is Spanish. He's learned English very well. He hears things in English. He has to translate them in his mind into Spanish to process them and then translate back to come out, correct? He goes home to Cuba, which home will be here very soon. If he goes back to Cuba or he gets around other Spanish-speaking individuals and starts speaking Spanish fluently, then it becomes hard for him to get back into the mindset of English. It's no different when we try to form these new filters in our mind of how we're looking at things. We have to take in the event. It's going to want to run through our autonomic process through the filters that are there, that are hard set and hardwired, and we have to stop ourselves and think of the new way of thinking. We have to translate it in our mind. It is our language of how we perceive the world. We have our own internal language of how we perceive things. And learning a new one is like learning a new language where you have to stop and you have to translate what you're hearing, what you're taking in, what you're experiencing into a form that you can then turn around and react properly. I mean, and Lori brought it up. The thing I was going to go into there was that, you know, we pray that God would just take away that kind of thinking from us or the way we do certain things. And then it doesn't happen instantly or in the time that we think it should take. So then we kind of fall back to the old way. And then we get upset and frustrated and think, well, you know, God doesn't care. Endure. You have to build that endurance. Anything you want to add, Lori?
Are you done?
No.
Okay. Well,
We're getting close.
finish and then I'll.
Well, okay, so, and I know you guys, you've heard a lot about Optavia over the years, but Dr. Anderson, there's a phrase that they use in there, a phrase called stop, challenge, and choose. It works for their diet plan, but it also works in this situation. As we're taking in events and we start to try to process them with those old filters and the ways that we don't want to think and get away from those distortions, we need to stop, challenge ourselves to think the other way, and then we have to choose to actually act in that manner. Stop, challenge, and choose. Go ahead. Maybe. I want to read while you do that.
I just, you know, I'm not up here really to critique him or to, you know, translate really. I feel like for the last 15 years, maybe at least, maybe 20, I feel like God is, or not God, but many times when I've led worship or I go to speak, I feel like there's that negative thought. You can't speak. You sound so, you know, nothing came out like what you were supposed to, or what was in my head. It didn't come out right. And so many times those thoughts of, you can't speak. You just sing. Don't say anything. You know, don't speak. So in my last 20 years, I've always jokingly told many people, I can't speak, I can't talk in front of people, I just am simple-minded. I always use the phrase, I don't speak with tongues of angels. I don't, you know, some of the speakers that you hear and, you know, all the awesome things that they say, I'm simple. I don't say these profound things. And so many times I feel like the devil has, you know, beat me down with that. And here in the last few years, 2 years, I feel like I've been seeing myself speak at different times. And there's those thoughts of, you don't speak. That's crazy. You don't do that. And I just keep seeing these visions. And was it last week? I don't know, before we were prayed for. But I saw myself up here speaking with him. And I just want to encourage you, don't let fear, I'm not saying I'm going to do this all the time, so don't worry. He does an awesome job. I feel like he does a really good job. So I just feel like I wanted to be up here to encourage you, to take those thoughts captive. And when the devil comes at you and says that you can't do this, do what he's, the stop, what was it? Stop, challenge, and
Choose.
That, hey, if this is what I feel like, this is the vision I feel like God is giving me, he's going to make it happen. It's not going to be in my own strength, because I don't have that ability. It's through him. And we are not perfect in this area. I still, unfortunately, am fearful, and hopefully Soraya will continue to help me. Or different ones, when you see me and afraid. We're learning, and again, we want to be here. It's our heart to help you guys too. We need you. We need you to fulfill your purpose that God has for you. And we just want to encourage you not to let not let the thoughts, dictate what you're going to do, but just encourage you that if God has a plan, He's gonna make it happen. And so.
Okay. So I will post those cognitive distortions on the family page, and then I'll fix the printout and get those so that if you guys want them. But what I want for you to do, your assignment, is to look for these cognitive distortions in your own thinking and begin to take them captive and verbally reverse the thought. Filter it. Oh, I'm so stupid. No, I'm not stupid. I just made a mistake. Verbally stop it and start to create those positive pathways. Filter it. And remember, it takes 3 cycles of 21 days, according to Dr. Leaf's book, to build that new pathway in your mind. That's 63 days. How's everybody doing on the negativity fast for 63 days?
We're trying. My kids are constantly reminding me. Reese.
No negativity. So these mindsets or ways of thinking, well, the title of this message was, and Heather didn't make me a title slide because I think she didn't want to be seen as not knowing how to spell. It was called Breaking the Chains of Your Identity, of our identity. Breaking the Chains, spelled B-R-A-K-I-N-G instead of E-A. And she didn't want to do that because that would look like she didn't know how to spell breaking. But these mindsets or these ways of thinking, they're chains that are breaking or slowing us down from finding our true identity, our true purpose for which we were created in the mind of God before He ever uttered the words, "Let there be light." Let that sink in. That true purpose was already picked out for you. You were already, He knew you before the foundation of the world.